That same evening, Monsieur de Villefort put on a black coat and white gloves, and got into his carriage, and alighted at 30 Avenue des Champs-Élysées. If the Count of Monte Cristo had lived in Paris society longer, he would have appreciated Monsieur de Villefort's visits at its full worth. Monsieur de Villefort was not only a magistrate, he also was a diplomat, and he paid very few visits. He gave a ball once a year, and appeared at it for only 15 minutes. He never went to the theater, the concert hall, or any other public place. Sometimes, but rarely, he would play a game of whist, being careful to choose partners worthy of him. An ambassador, perhaps, a prince, or an archbishop. Such was a man whose carriage drew up before Monte Cristo's door. The valet announced Monsieur de Villefort just as the Count, leaning over a large map, was tracing out itinerary from St. Petersburg to China. The public prosecutor entered with the same stately, measured tread in which he had entered the courtroom.
Count, the outstanding service you rendered my wife and son today has made it my duty to thank you. I have therefore come to carry out that duty and express my deepest gratitude to you.
As he spoke these words, the magistrate's face lost none of its usual arrogance, and his neck and shoulders retained the inflexible stiffness which made his flatterers describe him as living statue of law.
I'm very happy to have been able to save a mother's son, for maternal love is said to be the most sacred of all sentiments, and this happiness on my part dispenses you from a duty whose performance honors me. To be sure, for I know that Monsieur de Villefort is not prodigal with an honor he does me, but however precious it may be, it is worth less to me than my inner satisfaction.
Villefort, astonished at this unexpected reply, started like a soldier who feels himself pierced beneath haughty armor, and has a slight movement of his disdainful lip indicated that he did not consider the Count of Monte Cristo to be a very civil gentleman. He looked around for something which might serve as a pretext for the changing subject of conversation.
Are you interested in geography, Count? It's a rewarding study, especially for a man who, like you, according to what I've been told, at least, has seen every country represented on that map.
Yes, I made a psychological study of every human species on the assumption that would then be easier to go from the whole to the part rather than beginning with the part and going to the whole.
Ah, so you're a philosopher. Well, Count, if I were like you and nothing to do, I can assure you I'd find a less gloomy occupation.
It's true that man is a very ugly creature when one examines him closely. But you just remarked that I had nothing to do. Do you have something to do, Monsieur de Villefort? Or, to speak more clearly, do you think that what you do is worth being called something? Your eyes are fixed only on the social organization of humanity. You see nothing but the springs of a machine and not the sublime workman who makes it function. You recognize around you only those whose positions have been assigned to them by some minister or king. You are unable to see those men whom God has placed above kings and ministers by giving them a mission to fulfill rather than a position to occupy.
And do you regard yourself as one of those extraordinary beings?
Villefort was more and more astonished, and unable to decide whether the man who he was speaking to was inspired or mad.
Yes, I'm one of them, and I do not believe any other man has ever found himself in a position like mine. The domains of kings are limited by the natural barriers or changes of customs or language. My kingdom is as large as the world, for I am neither Italian, French, Hindu, American, or Spanish. I am a cosmopolitan. I adopt all customs and speak all languages. You think I am French because I speak with the same ease and correctness as you? But Ali, my Nubian, thinks I am Arab. Bertuccio, my steward, thinks I'm Roman. Haiti, my slave, thinks I'm a Greek. Therefore, since I am from no country, since I ask no government for protection, and since I regard no man for my brother, I am not deterred by any of the scruples or obstacles that paralyze the efforts of the weak. I have only 3 advisors. The first 2 are distance and time. But with persistence, I am able to overcome them. The third one is the most terrible, is the fact that I am mortal. Only that can stop me before I reach my goal. Unless I die, I will always be what I am, That is why I tell you things you've never heard before, even from the lips of a king. For kings have need of you, and other men are afraid of you. Who is not said to himself, in a society as ridiculously organized as ours, someday I may have to go before the public prosecutor.
But even you can say that to yourself, Count. For as long as you live in France, you must naturally submit yourself to French law.
I know that, Monsieur de Villefort, but when I enter a country, I study by my own methods all the men who may either be advantageous or disadvantageous to me, and I come to know them well, as they know themselves, or perhaps better. The result of this is that any public prosecutor with whom I might have to deal would find himself in a much more difficult situation than I.
In other words, human nature is weak, and all men, according to you, have committed errors?
Yes, either errors or crimes.
And you alone are perfect?
No, not perfect, only impenetrable. I maintain my pride in the face of man, but I abandoned it before God, who drew me out of nothingness to make me what I am.
I admire you, Count, and if you are really strong and really superior and really perfect or impenetrable, which, as you rightly say, comes to almost the same thing, then I can only say to you, be proud and masterful. That's the law of domination. But you must at least have some ambition or other.
Yes, I have one.
What is it?
As it happens to every man at least once in his life, I was once raised by Satan to the top of the highest mountain on earth. From there he showed me the whole world and said to me, as he said to Christ, Son of man, what would thou have in order to worship me? I thought for a long time, for a terrible ambition had been devouring my heart. Then I replied, I have always heard of providence. For the greatest, the most beautiful, and the most sublime thing I know of this world is to reward and punish. But Satan bowed his head and sighed. You are mistaken, he said. Providence does not exist, but it is invisible. You have never seen anything resembling it, because it works by secret springs and moves in hidden ways. All I can do for you is to make you one of the agents of Providence. I made a bargain with him. I may lose my soul because of it, but if I had to do it over again, I would do the same thing.
You say you fear nothing but death?
I didn't say I feared it. I said it alone could stop me.
What about old age?
My mission will be accomplished before I'm old.
And madness?
I almost went mad once, and you know an axiom. Nos bis in idem. It's an axiom of jurisprudence, and therefore falls within your range of knowledge.
There are other things to fear besides death, old age, and madness. There is, for example, epilepsy. That thunderbolt strikes you without destroying you, but after everything is finished. Come to my house someday, Count, and I'll show you my father, Monsieur Notaire de Villefort, one of the fieriest Jacobins on the French Revolution, a man who has not, perhaps like you, seen all the kingdoms of the earth, but did help to overthrow one of the mightiest of them. Yet the rupture of a blood vessel in his brain changed all that. Not in a day, not in an hour, but in a second. Monsieur Notaire, the former Jacobin, the former senator, and the man whom French was only a vast chessboard. This formidable Monsieur Notaire became poor Monsieur Notaire, a paralyzed man, a mute, frozen corpse, awaiting its final decomposition.
What do you conclude from this, Monsieur de Villefort?
I conclude that my father, led astray by his passion, has committed one or more of those wrongs, which escape human justice, but not divine justice, and that God has struck him down because of this.
Monte Cristo, with a smile on his lips, pushed down into the depths of his heart a roar which could have made Villefort flee with terror if he had been able to hear it.
I must leave you now, Count, but I leave you filled with an esteem which I hope will be agreeable to you when you know me better. For I am not an ordinary man, not at all, and you have already made Monsieur de Villefort your eternal friend.
Now that my heart is full of poison, let's go seek the antidote. Ali, I'm going to see the Madame. Have the carriage ready in half an hour.